All right, that works. I know that works. Anyway, I was saying, Carol is probably not going to be here. She said she might get service where she's vacationing. I guess she's kind of off the grid a little bit, whatever. But I hope she's having a good time. Um, we don't really have a chance to do vacations. I know this may sound strange, but Janet, is the registrar for Global Grace Seminary, my wife,
Hmm.
and then I'm a vice president, one of the founders, and we're retired, but we're not retired, if you know what I mean. Something's going on really 7 days a week because we're in like 27 countries. So at 11 o'clock at night, she gets a message from somebody that got a problem or need information or they want to do something. And she'll take the call, like I said, before she even goes to bed at night. So there's always in the morning, I wake up, I say, what's new for today? And inevitably she said, well, I got this email from somebody, got a problem. So you don't really, I hate to say this, but you don't really have time to take a vacation. And maybe as a pastor of a church, you probably feel that way. And you're a fireman and you're a volunteer and you're there. You got 4, 5, 6, 7 hats you wear. So maybe you feel the same way we feel.
Yeah, I was supposed to go hunting on Friday, and instead I've got a funeral. So it's that's just the
Did,
past. You
did
go
they
where you
ask
need.
you about that before they died?
I find that people are so rude about dying
I know it. They
at
just
the
do it
most
out of the
inconvenient
blue.
times.
The joy of being a pastor, the joy of
Yeah,
being the pastor, it comes with the territory.
that's
That's
it.
been around pastors. I've been on boards in churches over my lifetime, deacon, blah 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 blah. I know I know the work of a pastor, and my wife has worked for church as a church secretary in 3 or 4 different churches in our lifetime. We know all about. We do everything except to get in the pulpit to preach, and that's about it. But the rest of it, we're right there with you, brother. We're right there with you. But anyway, if you have any kind of insights that you can share that you learned from your wife, I'd love to have that here on the recording where Carol could hear it. Because maybe you got something that I don't know, because I don't know everything about it. In fact, I don't know as much as your wife knows about it. So that's not my specialty. But I've learned enough about it that I can use it as an adjunct resource to help people.
Yeah, and I didn't get a whole lot of details other than she just told me that how important it is to her work and the type of work she does. She specializes. I mean, she does general chiropractic care, but she specializes in people who have a hard time getting pregnant, and
Oh,
through using acupuncture and nutrition and regular chiropractic care, she's able to help people that were unable to get help, through Western medicine. So, I believe that it works. You know,
if it works, it works. Kind of like the old timey doctor that comes to the house, make a house call years ago when I was a child in the country, and the doctor would drive up and with a little black bag.
yeah,
And if the truth were known, that stuff he often gave people were placebos. He didn't have a clue how to help them, but he had one of these placebo, one of these sugar pills, and he said, "Now, if you take this for 5 days, I'm going to tell you what, you are going to be okay. So
that's
you
right.
just be sure you take this though every morning and every night religiously. Now with some water or with some food or however he was going to set it up. And their belief in what he said gave them the result that they were looking for, which goes back to what I'm big into. And in fact, I just sent this myself in an email that I'm going to be sending out to you guys. But this is something I just said to myself. I'm always researching and trying to learn something new. But this, I just made it. I made this to send to myself. Based on as a man thinks, so is he. Our approach is based on the idea that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interconnected, and that by changing our thoughts and behaviors, we can change our lives. This approach helps clients to identify negative thoughts, beliefs that may be holding them back, and develop new and more positive ways of thinking and behaving. I just sent that myself to an email. I'll get that out to you guys later.
Well, Henry Ford said it, and in our council room where we have church council meetings and things, there's a big whiteboard, and every month I write something on it to reflect on for the council. And one month I wrote on there a quote from Henry Ford that said, "Whether you believe you can, or you
Oh yeah,
cannot, you're right."
yeah. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorites right there. If you
So
believe you can, if you believe you can't, you're right.
you got to start. It's where it starts. And actually, you've been proud of me. I was in adult Sunday school this Sunday. I was teaching on. We're working our way through Joseph, and we got to where he's in the can. Where he's been thrown in the dungeon.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
they were talking about thought processes. Like, what do you think he was thinking? Do you think he was a bad? And I said, I don't think so. I think he knew he was blessed. He knew who he was. He knew, and then other people. So we talked about fear and how that goes through the amygdala, and how wisdom goes through the cortex, the whatever. But that once you have a thought, what value you place it depends on which way that thought goes through. And if it goes through the amygdala, then your body's going to have a reaction that you can't respond to. That it, the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Yes.
You have a choice though when you get the thought, what value you attach to it, and either you're going to react or act out of wisdom or react out of fear. And
that's my favorite two words: act or react.
So we had actually had a long conversation about how that simple concept, how many lives that can change. We do one of the ministries of our church is CASA, which is a court appointed sponsor, where kids that are in homes and things like this who get sort of a mentor, an adult mentor, and things like. I said, this is what we should be teaching those adults to teach these kids.
Oh,
early.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Well, I would like to be in that kind of class. That's very, very good. I mean, that has teeth in it. That has meat. That has substance, if you will. That kind of conversation. Did you get the video that I shared?
Yeah,
I have been intrigued. I have been totally intrigued about that analogy about the boats in the water. I probably have watched it 10 times because I want to put a twist on it tonight. I want to put a twist on it. So I think I heard that. In fact, I got it queued up to play, but since you've watched it and we know what it's about, I won't do that. But I want to put a little a twist on it. He's saying you're gonna on the bank observe the boats going by, some fast, some slow. But what if you've already gotten in one of those boats? What if fear has pulled up into the bank and you have jumped into the bank, into that boat off the bank called fear? what do you do now? He didn't address a what if. He's a good analogy. I loved it. I can say I probably listened to him 10 times over and over. I was just enthralled about, but he also has that same analogy that he's using in introducing about meditation. He talks about meditation, then he has his boat analogy, then he goes into rest of meditation, which I think is good. So I picked up some information there as well. But what do you think about the guy has stepped into the boat, and now the boat is now adrift down the river,
Well,
and he's in this boat called fear.
it seems to me that the biggest key here is recognizing that you've partnered with fear, or that
Okay.
you've stepped into the fear boat, right? So the first step is recognizing that's where you are, because a lot of people who are reacting to fear don't even know they're reacting to fear.
Good point.
You know, this is a conversation, part of the conversation I had Sunday. What we call sin, right?
Yeah.
I contend the vast majority of sinful behavior comes from embedded fear, either implicit or explicit.
Yeah.
Explicit is obvious for us.
Yeah.
Implicit's not so much. We have embedded for some, my wife might say, "Why did you blow up at this little thing?" And I'd say, "I don't know."
Exactly.
And because there was some embedded fear that made me immediately go to the fight mode, or the right. And so the first step is recognizing that you've partnered with fear instead of wisdom. Right. So that way you can rewind the tape, as it were. Right.
Okay.
Just because you've gotten on the boat, you're still in control. We have this misconception that once you're in the fear boat, somebody else is in control. No, you've got the wheel. You could still turn it off into the bank and get on the wisdom boat.
Yes.
Right.
I like that. I love that. You can turn it to the bank and get off and get on the wisdom boat, which is the next one down coming in.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
I think it's a conscious decision, right? But first you have to be self-aware enough to know you are reacting to fear. You're reacting to a situation. The situation's not happening to you in particular, but the thought that you're having, you're reacting to. So it's just having that cognizant ability to say, I'm not going to ride this boat.
Exactly.
I'm on the boat, and
I'm
we're
on the
going to get
wrong
off.
boat. I caught the wrong boat.
That's right. That's right. I got swept up on the wrong boat, and that's okay. I have the power to get off. Right.
And I think that goes back to understand your divinity is your identity. You have the power, as you just said, to change the course, to go to the bank and get off and enter another boat called peace that passes all understanding, not fear that's triggered by some emotional reaction to that event. So I'm totally in agreement. I love that. I love that analogy, because I want us to discuss that other part that he never has. He's a really neat guy who's written a book, part of GGS and so on, but he's never used a problem in it like we're talking about, reacting to fear, which is a reactionary to something maybe true or imagined. Fear can be true or imagined.
Well, and I think what we're talking about here, Doc, is absolutely countercultural to Western, especially American thought processes in the 21st century, where people are absolutely dictated by their feelings.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so telling people that their feelings aren't not that they're not real, because they are real. It's just that they don't have to be controlled by them. Right.
Correct.
You actually have, if you don't like the feeling you're in, then get out of it. right? And giving people the tools to get out of it, right? Because most people get into,
I think that's what we're talking about tonight, giving people tools, another way of thinking, shall I say. See, what you brought up is another way of thinking.
yeah, and I think that's really what's important there is, and I think that a lot, like the people in my Bible study didn't recognize that. When I told them, they were all kind of blown away when I said, you shouldn't be controlled by fear, and fear is the antithesis to faith. Now, I said that, let's be clear. It's a good thing that we have the amygdala. It's a good thing that God give us the ability to have the fight or flight response when a tiger is chasing you, or your car's on fire, or something.
Or you
like
see
that.
a snake.
Yeah, right. So in life and death situations that you have to make instantaneous, that's a good thing. The problem is society lives in fear now. And because of that, they think there's no other way to live. The way we're supposed to live in peace and through wisdom is actually the foreign thing for us now, because we are so ingrained in fear living. So what the Bible, I think, offers us is how to live most abundantly, like we were created, which was not in, right? It's not to just dwell in. As a matter of fact, how many times does Jesus say it? It's like he says it so many times we miss it, right? It's like he begins and ends conversations. Be not afraid. Don't be afraid.
Fear not. Fear not.
Yeah, fear not. Fear not. And the reason he's doing it is because this is nothing new. People lived in fear. And he said, well, fear not, because that's not what you were created for, So
well, if you read in the social media posts today, what you're saying, you can absolutely verify.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I heard, I visited a lady today in the hospital, and her biggest concern, this woman is 80 years old. She's on the tail end of life, and her biggest fear is we're going to go to nuclear war.
What?
Yeah. But it's interesting, right? To me, you're in a hospital bed toward the end of your life, and you're afraid of nuclear exchange. That's a deeply embedded fear since the 60s or 50s, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Carried with her, and the news has sparked, that Putin is up to something, and to her, it translates to nuclear war. And I was like, why don't we just let that go? It's not. If it were to happen, what could we do about it? She said nothing. I said, well, you're in the hospital. Andy's going to prescribe something to you. While you're here, quit watching the news.
Yes.
And she said, oh, you think that's a good idea? And I said, I think for your health to get better, you need to stop watching the news.
Exactly.
At least while you're in the hospital. But try not watch it. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen just fine without you watching it. So
you won't make a lot of difference. But yeah, that's good. But we have to be mindful. We have to be mindful of how our thoughts, our emotions influence our actions. We have to become mindful of being on the bank or in the boat. We have to become mindful of that, because our thoughts create our beliefs, attitudes, actions, and ultimately what they do, they determine our success or our failure.
Right.
They do.
Well, and this is where I really like the language of learning to act in wisdom. Right. And I think that is a learned skill.
Yes.
Just like we have learned or been taught to live and react out of fear, I think we can learn to act in wisdom. And that becomes our knee-jerk reaction. Is this a wise thing for me to do? Whatever this is, right? Training our brain instead of taking every thought to go straight through the amygdala just going through the sensory cortex, so we can really begin that process of. And I think this is scriptural too, right? I think this is scriptural that the Bible teaches us. I mean, there's an entire book called Proverbs, for goodness sake.
Oh yeah.
It's just that to be wise, right? You know, is not the same to react to act in a situation wisely is not the same as to act in it in fear. Even if it's the same outcome. So, for example, I don't know, you got a cliff or something. You're at the edge of the cliff. Well, fear would say, don't take another step. You get all sweaty and stuff like this, and your heart races and you slowly scoot back, right?
Yeah.
Wisdom, you look over the cliff and say, well, I better not step off because that'll hurt. And turn around right? The result is the same, but one had a physiologic response that's negative, and one had no physiological response to you, right? So I think that if we can begin that work and early on, teaching children how to think that way, right? That process of acting out of wisdom instead of acting out of fear is a faithful response.
I think Acting Out of Wisdom would be a great book you to read and write. Excuse me. I think it'd be a really great book, Acting Out of Wisdom. 30 days devotional, a 30-day devotional by you, acting out of wisdom. And each day for 31 days, you're going to give them something to act out of wisdom on that can change their life by the way they program their thinking to act out of wisdom. There's your book right there.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
Yeah. You're the man can do it.
But who's going to publish me?
Oh, I got a gal to publish you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. She's a graduate of GGS and she has a publishing company now. Oh yeah. I'll put you in connect with Robin Smith. S-M-I-T. Robin Smith. She's a GGS graduate and she's got a publishing company now and she's expanded out. Oh, it's gotten big and it's only like 2 years old, but it's huge. All these people, all these books she's published, and they all become a #1 seller too. So she knows what she's doing. You write the book and I'll hook you up, brother. I'll get you hooked up. Guaranteed.
But I think there's something there. That we can't just tell our congregations, don't be afraid, act out of faith.
No,
we have to give them an alternative to acting in fear, and it has to be tangible alternative, something they can actually wrap their brain around.
Yes.
Well,
they've heard too many sermons that they say just do this, but the pastor never told them how to do it. Yeah, it was a good thought. But they had no clue how to make it happen, enact it, process it, and believe in doing it. They did. I was in counseling, coaching, and mentoring, for all these many years in churches, and they'd see me on Monday or Tuesday whenever they could, and they were always perplexed that the pastor said to do this. And they would say, but he never said how to do this. But they were wanting to do this, and now they were coming to me to break it down, the how-tos to get it done. And I'm one who's experienced that, brother. But the pastor didn't know. I don't think they knew how to do it, honestly. I don't think they did.
No, and the idea of acting in faith for a lot of us that have been to seminary is just, well, you just trust in Jesus. And that's true. I mean, well, that's true, but Jesus also in the, I would say the canon in its totality has given us a lot of really good examples on how to do that. And so what they really didn't do for us in seminary, which is helping me now as I'm working through my master's at Global, is this work on the how, right? How do I get you from the theological fear not to the practical of
Practical.
living wisdom? You
Yeah,
know,
and I like the practical. I'm a person who, if you can show me how to do it, that makes sense to me. If you can show me the steps, I like steps. That's the reason why I like the doctor of ministry, the DMin. We got two. We got one of the theology doctorate, and then we got the DMin, the doctor of ministry. And I'm primarily involved with the doctor of ministry, and then Dr. Matt is primarily involved with the other end of theology, because I like hands-on doing, making curriculum, and so on. And so that's what, if you should take the doctorate, if you take the DMin, I'll be working with you and I together to develop your curriculum of what you want to teach to get your DMin. So that's what I'm
yeah.
about. Because that's my forte. That's my wheelhouse. Because I got my first doctorate working 10 years in a brick and mortar school to get my first doctorate degree. And so I actually did that. It's not a theory. It's not a book I've read. It's a life that I actually lived for 10 years. And it didn't happen overnight. I mean, I developed them and taught them, and I called on somebody to take that class that would take it with me. And I developed another one. And I developed another person who took that class. And then I developed my last one, which is the one my book is written on, about skills training. That was the third curriculum that I wrote. And so I'm a walking example of how it actually works. I didn't read a book. I wrote the book, so to speak.
Well, I think that if theology is not practical, if it's so heavenly minded that it's no earthly good, then I think it should be left at seminary,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
because it's interesting to talk about a lot of that stuff, but it's easy to get lost in the weeds in it, and it does no practical good for the layperson. And they come to church for some practical, how do I live this faith out?
yes, yes. If you just teach a lot of theology in your sermons, your people will be really confused. They really be, because they'll
Well,
not know how to do it.
well, and that's not how Jesus taught.
No, he taught in parables,
He
like
was
this, like we're talking about the boat here. Now, this would be something that Jesus would talk about.
that's right. He would talk, he was actually always giving crud to the guys who were all theology, the Pharisees.
Yeah,
Right? The guy, he was more on a practical one-to-one,
yeah,
this is how we live this out kind of.
yes. How to live it out. How to live it out. You're absolutely correct. Well, I'll tell you what. I want to piggyback on this a little bit before we close out here, because the guy that you watched about the boats, was talking a little bit about meditation. So I want to kind of touch on that a little bit as we close. I find this helpful myself. These earbuds, I put it on music, kick back in my recliner, and I turn my music on my phone, plugged in with these earbuds. And that'll get you into what some people, there are different states you can be in, wave states, like delta. Delta is a slow leading you down into a kind of a zone with this music that's healing and puts you into a sleep state. But there are a lot of different alpha, there's a whole lot of different states that you can get in. But there's a Hertz, HZ Hertz. 432 is a very popular Hertz that you can go on YouTube and find all kind of music with this hertz. Now that has been called a miracle tone. It's been called a miracle tone.
Hmm.
When you combine that kind of music, it puts you into a meditative state, and it relieves stress, and it can bring about healing. It can bring about healing. So I want to challenge you before we close out next week to do an experiment. You go find you some music. On you, it's free. It's on YouTube. It's all kind of music on YouTube. All kind of music. But find you a meditative music. Get you some earbuds and put them in with your phone. Just kick back, zone out, relax. And I find if you stress during the daytime, it's a wonderful thing to do before you would go to bed. It'll put you in a relaxed, meditative state that you can go to bed and you go and rest, therapeutically rest, I would say, therapeutically rest, because this music has calmed you down, and put you in
What was the number for the hertz?
hertz is 432, 432 Hz, hertz.
It makes
432.
sense. Because you think about how the inflammatory response of the body operates. And if the body is stressed emotionally, psychologically, the inflammatory response of your body's on haywire, and it's not able to focus on the things that need healing necessarily. Right. It's overextended.
Yeah, that's a good word. Overextended.
So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
But I would say do this before bedtime. Give it a shot for a few evenings before we go to bed. Just kick back for 15 minutes. You don't have to do it forever. Do it for 15 minutes. Be amazing. Be amazing. I do it really quite often, to tell you the truth. It's just something I've been doing for years, on and off, sometimes more than others. But here's how you know meditation works. Does it improve your cognitive function? Does it improve your cognitive function? Then you'll know your meditation, mindfulness state has improved your cognitive function. Do you think better? Are you thinking clearer? I think that's the telltale. I think that's the telltale. Now, I'd love to get your response. I think, are we next week, 6 weeks? Is that it?
I think so.
I mean, it's been going on for me about 6 months, it seems. But I think we're on 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about how we want to close out. I could have a lady that's been with me since 83. Excuse me, 93, 93. She was a person about to take her life. Got a divorce from a pastor. They were pastoring a church in Texas. And she worked for a pharmaceutical company. So the pills were available to take her life. But she came to me. That was a guided encounter. And now she's working on her doctorate degree. Believe it or not, wonderful lady. I've actually worked with most of her family over the many, many years since 93 until now. In fact, she just called me 2 or 3 days ago. Anytime she has an issue about anything, she calls me Dr. C. She said, Dr. C, I need to talk to you. I said, honey, anytime you need to talk to me, you got my ear. So I've been dealing with she and her family for all these many years. And I thought about maybe her just coming on just to give her testimony where people know it's not, I'm saying stuff.
Mhm.
I'm supposed to say stuff. As a teacher, as a preacher, you're supposed to say stuff. And the people expect you to say stuff. But it's more it's more intriguing when you hear somebody else say, this stuff he's talking about actually works. And I'm a walking example of it. So I'm thinking about her because she could talk forever, by the way. She could talk to, she could, we would shut everything off and she'd still be talking. I mean, truly. I
Sounds
used to
like
go
she,
out. I
sounds
used to
like
go
she's got
out.
some pastor in her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to go out and my students would ask me to preach on Sunday sometimes. They were my students. And so their pastor or they would ask me to come preach. And I would tell her, I want you to go with me to verify what I'm going to say to the congregation is really true. And I said, but please leave me a little time. I would say, please leave me a little time. Because if I didn't tell her to leave me some time, she would take the hour herself. I mean, she could just let it rip. And she knew her scriptures. She knew her story. She knew everything. So what I tell her to do, what I'll do, I think I'll just tell her to maybe speak maybe 15 minutes or so. And then give a chance for you guys to ask questions. And maybe Carol will be on here next week as well. And so you guys ask us questions. We kind of close out with that. Unless there's something on your mind that we need to address that I haven't yet addressed. I'm all about the way we think. I'll be honest with you. My whole premise of what I write about, teach about, talk about, and believe about, as a man thinks, so are we. That's what it says in Psalms. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So what's the heart? You hear people say, no, now we're going to get down to the heart of the matter. You heard that saying? We're going to get down to the heart of the matter. That means, okay, that's what's really important. The heart of the matter is this. And as a man thinks, you can get down to the heart of the matter, which is going to be your actions with positive outcomes or reactions with negative outcomes.
So I think that thought and faith go hand in hand. You cannot have faith without having data and giving a cognizant assent to that data, right? Those are the first two steps to believing a thing, right? You know, like I tell my kids in confirmation, I'll put a chair up there and I'll say, what is this? And they'll say, it's a chair. I say, how do you know it's a chair? And they'll say, because, you know, we know what a chair is. You know, yeah, you've been given data on a chair. So you all now, that's step one toward faith. Step two, you have already covered too, because you've all agreed, you've cognitively ascended to the reality of this being a chair. Now, step three is the one that most people don't go through. Is this chair holding me up as I'm standing next to it? And they say, no. And I said, until I sit in it, it's not. And that's how faith works. You have to have the data, the raw data about who Jesus and this is. You have to have a cognizant thought that leads us to believe that that is true. But that still doesn't get you to a life sustaining faith until you sit in the chair, right? And so I think that thought, the more I'm learning, thought and faith are handmaidens, you know, and just like thought and fear are handmaidens.
Yeah.
So you're really the one that decides who you're going to partner with, right? You know, the thoughts are going to come no matter what. You really don't have the ability to not think.
Now,
right?
They're gonna come. They're coming.
You know, the question is, what are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
And so you can either process those thoughts through faith or through fear. And that is totally a power given to you as being in the image of God, right? That I don't think necessarily animals may not have that same cognitive capacity to receive stimuli, outside stimuli, and then think, am I going to act wisely or am I going to act out of fear? They just act.
Yeah.
We, on the other hand, have a cognizant ability that that supersedes that, right?
Yeah.
The ability to oh, what's the word I'm thinking of? To transcend our current reality through thought, right? And to think past the current stimuli into a faith situation.
Yeah.
I don't, there are not other creatures that can do that.
I don't think
So
so. I think they're perhaps more reactive than active. I mean, they see something, they react to. They want it or they don't. The food, they instinctively know this food is good to eat, but they're animals that know that food is not good to eat. They can smell it and know that's not good food, and they can smell it and know it's good food, but they react to it.
So, Doc, would you think then that we are actually living at a baser level, right? A more primal level when we're living in fear, where instead of transcending to the faith level that allows us to live in wisdom and abundantly at a peace, right? It seems like there's two different levels here. Like we could stay in this animal kingdom kind of lizard brain fear, or we can transcend that to where Christ is calling us to something different.
I think we're not able to go up for the lack of knowing who we are.
Mm.
I think we stay down here as quote unquote Kate Fairchild, I would say, mere human beings. And she says, we're not human beings. We're spirits slow down to visibility. We're flesh made visible. The spirit made visible. And so I know it's hard because sometimes I start out teaching stuff, but I teach it from a truth, but it's hard for some people to get it. Because I'm a big believer about spirit. We are spirit beings. Be the light, that egg and the sperm. I can never get over that as long as I live. Everything that we are is there. Everything that we are is right there, that moment. It's all in that little boom. Isn't it amazing when you think about that?
I think it's amazing, but then again, it points me sort of to my argument that, and I agree, we are spirit beings living a flesh experience.
Yeah.
However, we don't act like spirit beings. We act out of lizard brain fear reaction.
Tell the truth.
Instead of who we truly are.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
And so I feel like that is the conflict that I'm wrestling with, and is how to get folks from a position of the material, right, what you experience isn't what is most true.
Exactly.
Right, about you, right?
That's a challenge to teach your congregation. If you can get that across to them, wow, you have succeeded, brother.
Well, I think then we can focus on maybe it's what Jesus has taught us, learning how to focus and live in the now.
Yes.
Right.
Now is my favorite word. Now.
Instead of living regretfully in the past or fearfully of the future, we can live in the present moment. Right. And then there's something there that we can connect with one another, not out of fear, but out of love.
Yeah.
Right. That's a hard thing to do.
Yes, very. But the fact of the matter is, now is probably one of my favorite. If just all the words there is so small, it's almost good as the word re is a prefix, like return, rework, re whatever. That's one of my big words I learned a long time ago that was so powerful. But now in re are probably two of my favorite words. Now faith is. Now faith is. It's not tomorrow. It's not yesterday. Now faith is. Now is the day of salvation. Now is now is it. There's just their whole book's written on now. The now is all there is. There's no tomorrow. There's no yesterday. It's a memory. We live in the now, but I don't think we live in the now because we don't understand how to live in the now. I don't
Well,
know.
we live in a culture, Doc, that is so demanding of our time.
Yeah.
And it's almost demands that we remain anxious and busy to have value.
Yeah.
And instead of being able to just be, you have to be more and do more and hope for more. And so it's very difficult for people to even enjoy, like when they're on vacation, you know?
No, they go on vacation, but their mind is not on vacation. I guarantee you.
Yep.
Their mind's not on vacation. They're thinking about what are they going to have to do back at the office to catch up all that work that wasn't done by the staff that they're going to have to do to get everything caught up.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about Sabbath there. And you know what I really like is the Psalms. And in the Psalms, the longer Psalms, it has the Shelah in there, you know, and they really haven't determined what Selah actually means, but it's some sort of pause clearly to do something. And it's interesting to me that not only does God tell us you need a break, he took a break, you need a break, but as we read the Psalms, the lament Psalms and so forth, there's this intentional break from it. Selah, stop.
Yeah, pause and reflect on what you just read.
Yeah. And
but you can think about it, know what it means. What does this mean? What does this mean to me?
So there's something, I think, work that if hasn't been done needs to be done in the holy pause.
Yeah,
you know,
I like that holy pause.
Where it stops us and reminds us to be in the now instead of living in the torment, to take a moment to just pause in the holiness of the moment. Because Sabbaths don't even have to be a whole day. What about a Sabbath hour? Or a Sabbath, and this goes for me, if I could train my brain to take a Sabbath 10 minutes a day to where I totally disconnected from the world, how rejuvenating that would be. So yeah, I think there's something there too. Oh, well, Doc, if you got nothing else, I'm gonna leave you because I got a funeral to plan.
Well, you go plan it because the guy didn't ask your permission anyway. I love you, brother.
Love you too. Behave yourself.
All right, bye-bye now.
Bye.